possibly the song I would pick too. Audio
Well,
Slaves.
there you go, man.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I think I looked into this, and the song is actually about death. It's actually about waiting for death, and it's a pretty amazing way to think about it. And I think, like, in a lot of ways, we're like constantly dying and kind of being reborn a little bit. So it's just it just speaks to me. And as a matter of fact, when I proposed to my fiance, after we did, this song came on, and I just wept to myself. So.
I thought you were going to say you chose this song to propose to her, and I was like,
no,
that would be a bold choice.
Man, this entire album is probably one of my favorite albums of all time. Audio Slave, just amazing.
I have it on very strong repeat, especially during my garage gym workouts, and anytime I get to choose the music at the gym, they're definitely high up there. We're gonna lower that so we don't get sued by anyone. But yeah, I'm joined here, guys. If you're tuning in, just kind of catching our conversation here by Sean LeFloch, fitness fella. And it turns out we have a decent amount of overlapping kind of commonalities that I didn't know about until I read your bio that you sent me over. For anyone else joining in, again, he is located in Boynton Beach, Florida, which is never fun to say, Boynton. But it's got Bo in there, so that's all good.
Hey.
So I recently found you actually because of your recent video about LMNT, which I'm also a wholesale distributor or whatever the dealer. We're dealers.
Oh, very cool.
We are salt dealers and, not drug dealers, but sort of kind of the future of healthy drug dealers or something like that. So and he did a great podcast with the great Rob Wolf, that I was listening to earlier today. And I'm a huge fan of Rob Wolf, been following him since the early days. Got to meet him a few times too. And I know you have, so Scotty Hagness, is he a guy that works with you or what's the connection there?
Yeah, so Scotty was my coach from almost the beginning as I was in the world of CrossFit. I think 2011, we started working together as I came through the first ever CrossFit Open. And then did 2 years, obviously made it to regionals the first 2 years that they actually did it. And then all the athletes decided to show up, and that's when my plans deviated a little bit. But I think I worked with him for another 3 or 4 years. So I think 5 or 6 years total for Scott and I. And then we pivoted to, being, doing a podcast together. We had, I don't know, close to 300 episodes under our belt. I think we've had it on hiatus for the beginning of this year. I have a lot of things going on business wise, also with my kid, and it was a little bit of a pivot, but I imagine at some point we might pick it back up. And I think it was just a good time for both of us because we had gotten through the pandemic, et cetera. And, we still are in a really good relationship.
Awesome. And yeah, for again, to keep the introduction going, I think, when I do this little podcast thing, I like to find guys like you because I think there's this like kind of, I'll call it the 1%. And we're not talking about the uber wealthy. We're talking about the fitness redefiners. And that's kind of my TED Talk, my running theme of my mission is trying to redefine fitness. And guys like Sean here are doing that, I think, on a daily basis through their posts, through the work that they're doing with clients on a daily basis. And again, I'm excited to dive into a lot of the things that, again, these topics that I've been covering. And it sounds like, again, we got a lot in common, and I'm excited to dive into that, including the CrossFit space that I've been a part of for a long time as well. It sounds like we probably got in around the same time, around 2010. Is that about when you?
Yeah, I think I started doing it. I think my level 1 might have been in 2010, my original level 1. And then, So probably right around that.
Yeah, mine I think was August 2010.
Yep.
So, yeah.
I think I did mine in like April, I want to say, or something like that at Virtuosity in Brooklyn.
Yeah. Awesome.
They were doing some there. I think actually Boz.
I did my level 2. I did my level 2 there, actually.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. It's a sick gym.
Yeah. I don't think it exists anymore, or some they've changed over different things. But yeah, for those not familiar, we'll move on from that topic. But the other interesting commonalities that I noticed is you have Stony Brook University. So I didn't go there myself, but I had a lot of ties there. I got my first speeding ticket driving to Stony Brook, a freshman year of college. from Staten Island. That was fun. I think I was doing 94 and a 55.
It
And
must have been on nickels.
I don't know. It's all Long
It's all a
Island.
blur.
Long Island's all the same to me. I don't know. It's exit like 94 or something. I don't
Oh,
know.
there you go. So you're way out there. Yeah.
Something like that. And but the high school I went to, Brooklyn Tech, was a little bit of like a feeder system towards Stony Brook. So and I played football for Wagner College for a year. So
Oh,
we
nice.
did
Okay.
have some overlap of football there as well with Stony Brook. And yeah, I can name a bunch of fellas I know that graduated from Stony Brook, played football there. You played lacrosse there, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And
Yeah, I played 4 years of lacrosse there
wow.
for first 2 years for Lars Tiffany, and then the second 2 years for Rick Soul.
Nice. And then the other connection we have, and it sounds like we might have been there around the same time, was the Hospital for Special Surgery on the Upper East Side of New York City. You were there around 2008, 9, 10? Was that when?
Yeah, so I think I started there in the summer of 08. That's when I graduated undergrad, and then I spent 09, and then moved down to Florida in end of July of 2010. So probably, good 2 solid years there.
Yeah, so we literally might have crossed paths in the cafeteria or something there, because
For sure.
I graduated with my doctorate in physical therapy I want to say May of 2008, and then my first job was a 3-month, because I had done some work there as a student, one of my affiliations, for 6 weeks, and then they had an offering. I stayed in touch with my clinical instructor, and they had a 3-month temporary maternity leave coverage position. So I think I worked pretty much as a temporary physical therapist there for 3 months. Yeah. So
on the first floor there, right next to the cafeteria.
it was no, I was in acute inpatient.
Okay.
Yeah. I was up in the
because I know they have the PT on the first floor there.
Yeah. So I've been by there a lot, but no, I was on the floors, seeing everyone, getting them walking after their total knee replacements and total hip replacements, things like that. So so very cool about our connections. And then the funny thing is, again, all these years later, it sounds like we're talking the same language. So the name of your podcast was the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast, and those are all words that I struggle to figure out how to include into my own brand. And again, I feel like they've all kind of I hesitate to even use them, especially having moved here to Colorado, because they have a lot of interesting connotations that folks run with when they hear wellness. They go to things that I don't necessarily agree with in some capacity. So I've shied away from diving too much into any of those words, but I'd love to hear maybe, and again, we have the CrossFit overlap. So I don't know if your definition of fitness, it's something I've asked a lot of my guests here, and I'd love to hear we'll take all three of those one at a time, and not to put you too much on the spot, but how do you define fitness? Is it along the CrossFit methodology, or do you have a little bit of a different take on it?
So I think it's constantly evolving. And as I learn who I am and where I am in my life, that definitely changes. So I was not fit for being a dad. Right. So, let's say 5 years ago, I was really fit for the sport of fitness,
Right.
but I wasn't fit for life. Like I had no idea how to care for another human being, how to balance myself. So I wasn't fit. So I think one of the most important things that we have to assess is what is my overall goal, and what, not necessarily overall goal, but what are the demands of life given me?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if I define fitness as my ability to run fast, lift heavy, broad times, modal domains, and I'm spending a majority of my time of fitness for that, then and then all of a sudden I have a kid, then the ability for me to accomplish the task is incomplete. So I actually need to open up my ideas of fitness. And that's where my evolution of fitness has continued to evolve, which is incorporating your personal identity and where you're allocating your energy and your time.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people that I work with, specifically because I work with ageless athletes. So we're talking about the professional high performer, who has these goals oriented kind of things. And I am there to kind of be the mirror, ask questions, and guide them toward eventually what I think that they actually want versus what they think they want. And those are two separate things, because the person who shows up wanting that thing is actually the same person that's preventing you from getting that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that answer. Definitely jives again with, I feel like, again, it's, whatever we call this, a soul brother or whatever, especially you started with the audio slave. I'm feeling the vibes for sure. But yeah, I feel like, you're just going to echo a lot of the things I've been saying on this. And this is, I think, my 91st episode. So I'm going to try to catch you guys, and maybe while you're on hiatus, I got 200 or so episodes to catch up on. And again, that's the funny part of defining fitness, right? Is oh, you made 300 episodes of podcasts. Like, I got it. That's how I define my fitness, is I got to have 300 episodes. And when I have 301, I'll have beaten you in the work.
Well, that's a great point though, Bo, is that I think our ability to define what our fitness is always from comparison. Right? Like, that's the first thing that people do. And especially in the world of CrossFit, is like, oh, okay, so I can do a squat now. Great. And then you look at the board and you go, oh, that person did a squat with 300 pounds on their back.
Right.
I have to be able to do that. And, in terms of joy, comparison is the enemy of
the thief of joy.
There you go. Right.
Yeah.
So that being said, it's also going to get you off your couch and start you moving. So there's no, there's no good or bad. It's just a tool. And what are you using that tool for? But yeah, man, I'm on board.
Yeah. And the other definition that kind of jives with is, I think Kelly Starrett usually defers to the definition of, fitness is how productive of a member of society are you? And again, if your role is to be a father, like you said, I mean, it's great to be able to run and carry your child, and God forbid something happens and you gotta, that's always been the CrossFit thing, is like, oh, there's a car accident and you got to run over and carry a body over, and like that extreme. But then again, I think that's where, again, CrossFit lost a lot of its way of talking about general physical preparedness. So, and I've heard you talk about that concept of GPP a lot. So moving over to wellness though, because we can keep going on pontificating on fitness, I think, for a while. But wellness, how do you define that? Why is that a separate word than fitness in your kind of brand?
So fitness is, the emphasis there is definitely task oriented in terms of the physical world. Wellness, I think, starts to incorporate some of the nutritional aspects of health. So how your body actually is able to perform and acclimate to stress. And I think that's one of the things that is a huge topic of creating different levels of stress that your body has to respond to. So like, you listen to the Andrew Huberman podcast, you hear all these different types of scientists coming out and being like, cold baths are great, heat shock proteins, yada, yada, yada. All these things, you're looking at such a small micro scale that, yeah, like that one variable could potentially change all these things, but you're looking at this in a complex of thousands and thousands of variables. And the overarching thing that you need to be able to take care of is the three foundational components of your wellness, which are nutrition, stress management, and, I think in some ways, the best way of describing it is just rest, restorative work, and sleep. Right. So those are the components that I break up into wellness: sleep, stress management, and nutrition.
Yeah. And again, that completely lines up. I have my 5 pillars of health. The first one is movement. So that's kind of the fitness side of it.
Yep.
The next 2 physical ones are the nutrition, again, what you're putting into your body, and kind of that recovery is the category I call it for the third one of, again, the ability to rest and recover. And that to me does include stress management for sure. So, and then the other 2 being, and we're going to talk about mindset and mindfulness, and connection being the 5th one that I think gets often overlooked, but that's definitely a great way to connect that wellness piece. And then the third word there is the longevity. And that's going to take us into the ageless athlete that you mentioned already. And so would love to hear kind of your definition of aging. And it sounds like, again, we might have read a lot of the same books in some capacity. So I don't know if I've done David Sinclair's book and things like that. If you've gotten into his podcast, that Andrew Huberman, I guess, started that network of podcasts, and he actually had David Sinclair. If anyone's not familiar, his book is Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to. So that's really good stuff.
Yeah. Dr. Tia is also another reference that I've kind of gone with before. I also have interviewed on my podcast some of the guys from Prolon in terms of fasting, mimicking diets, and longevity in that sense. So I mean, right now, my idea of longevity is, and I picked this up from the guys from Pearl is more of, instead of lifespan, it's more of like quality span. Like
Hmm.
there's a story that Laird Hamilton talked about on Joe Rogan's podcast of an 85-year-old guy. A week before he died, he was jumping out of a helicopter doing,
Right.
skiing in the backcountry
Hmm.
skiing. It's like, that's the idea. It's like
Right.
you're just gonna not wake up one day. But longevity, to me, in terms of, okay, great, you want to live forever, or you want to be able to perform forever. What the hell does that mean for you? What are the things that are going to guide you along the way? What are the rails that are going to keep you on that path? And that's something that's important as a coach, to identify what those things are. And as your life evolves, you go from, let's say, being an athlete to now you're business and family oriented. Then your kids graduate from high school, and now you're alone again. You know what I mean? What's your relationships like? What's your relationship to yourself? What's your interpersonal relationships? And that's where I think a lot of what you just said, which is, building a sense of community, and then ideally continuing to evolve your sense of self along the way. Because I think the biggest thing that is going to take years off your life is not having a sense of purpose or direction. I think that that has been very, very prevalent in the last 2 years when you look at aging populations in these isolated settings who just don't do well. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? And I think that's something that's just not part of our innate nature in a lot of ways, and partly because I don't think we're in Western society equipped to be alone for that long.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. That goes back to, again, Rob Wolf, who we talked about early on. His paleo primal, talked about all that, but really understanding the way our genetics are wired to have had thousands and thousands of years and generations of again being in those tribes, and how that certainly affects our physiology, and we tend to neglect that concept. And again, it's been very interesting. One of the studies I saw that came out with the lockdowns with COVID was every day of loneliness was equivalent to smoking a pack of cigarettes in terms of the negative physiological effects. And again, like, you can soundbite that or whatever, but yeah, there's definitely a lot there. So that's kind of the longevity piece. And again, in terms of ageless athlete, and fit for life, I think these are terms that I think a lot of folks have probably heard. But
Mhm.
how do you incorporate that into your work, your work with clients? Like, and again, I want to highlight something you said of, like, people come in thinking they want one thing, you seem like you want to slowly guide them to the right answer, maybe, and maybe the combination of what they want versus what you think they need. And that's not a judgment in there if it sounds like it, because I think we are aligned very much in what that is.
That continues to evolve for me, because I only know what I know. And I
Right.
know from this meat suit that I wear and the eyes that I see through, of what I think is the right thing. But realistically, everything is exactly as it should be.
Mm.
And that's something that more recently I'm starting to appreciate, that, like, there's a part of me that loves the challenge and loves the pursuit of change and getting better. But again, like, that's a part of me that eventually will have to be reconciled in order for me to actually become complete. Because if I identify myself as someone who's challenged and needs to continue to change, then I'm going to need to continue to change, and I'm never going to get there, right? There is no destination. So as I look at some of the clients that I work with and continue to work with, I'm much more accepting of where they're at. And I always know that underlying whatever they're doing, there's a sense of, I'm not supposed to be like this.
Mm.
And I see that because I feel that in myself. And I think the thing that I'm starting to work on more and more is this, oh, you're there already. Like,
Right.
the reason why you don't have what you want is because, or you can't get what you want, is because you already have it.
Mm. Yeah,
Right?
and yeah, no, I
Go
like
right ahead.
that. Yeah, I was just gonna say, I put my unilome symbol up next to your head in the video, and that's the tattoo I have.
Oh, very cool.
You kind of said there is no destination. Again, and this is a Buddhist symbol, and it's been thrown around a few different religions, called the unilome. And the top point is the kind of destination, which again most of us will never reach, of enlightenment. So this is the path to enlightenment. And like you're saying, it's a journey. And that I got it on my arm because I want to have that kind of daily reminder of, like, we're, like you said, it's not, most people do not reach enlightenment or whatever that thing is. And whether or not you can change, again, what that goal is. But again, it's understanding you're going to be on different aspects of that throughout your life. So you're going to slide, again, like on chutes and ladders, you're going to slide up the board, and then you go, you slide back down and go back a few spots day in and day out.
Yeah, for sure. And some people call this like, you descend, or sorry,
Mm,
life is kind of cyclical. But the
yes.
way that I see it also is that it's less of a cyclical thing, more of a spiral, whether it's downward, inward, or
Hmm.
upward ascending.
Right.
Because the idea is that every time you come around, you have a new layer of
Hmm.
awareness, experience,
Right.
right? So like if you're that person, man, why do I always get hurt? It's because that lesson still hasn't taken hold yet.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I hurt my back so many times. Why do I keep hurting my back? Well, because, life is giving you exactly what you need. You haven't learned this lesson yet. Something is there. It's time for you to maybe peel back the layers, or in our case, work with somebody who can show you the mirror and be like, hey, man, what you think you want isn't lining up with what you're doing or what you're thinking.
Right. Yeah. And again, the beginning of that symbol is a big old spiral there. So that's like you said, it is kind of always revolving. And I actually had it as a water. I had my artist make it more of a water symbol because I have a lot of water connections, but that fluidity of life. So yeah,
I
no,
imagine you're probably also an Aquarius, I imagine.
no, I'm
Oh,
not.
okay, good. All right. That would be too creepy because I'm as well.
Oh, okay. No, I don't.
Not that I believe in astrology.
Right, right. That reminds me of a funny recent meme or whatever I saw. The girl asked the guy like, "Oh, what sign are you?" And he's like, "Dinosaur." And she's like, "That's not one of the signs." Or she's like, "That dinosaur's not a real sign." He says, "None of them are real, honey." So not to offend anybody who's astrological, but I assume they're not my base listenership anyway.
Uh,
So moving on from the ageless athlete, you threw out the word in our response here of biohacking. And so I'd love to know if that's something, what does that mean to you? And again, that term's gotten so much
yeah.
stuff around it, but yeah, see if we can narrow that down.
Yeah, so I just use that because it's just some people, a lot of people kind of understand what that is, and to me, it's just looking under the hood. And there's definitely layers to it. I knew about some of the things that I had personally many years ago, but I didn't have the financial ability to dig down the rabbit hole, so I held off, and I worked on tertiary stuff as much as I could, sleep. Low hanging fruit that was affordable, sleep,
Hmm.
food, quality foods, maybe some intermittent fasting, etc. I think those are technically biohacking things because you're changing your physiology through sleep and stress management and also diet. So like that would be a very, very conservative ways of changing the way your body's biology works. And deep down inside, you're actually changing the translation and transcription of your DNA. And then from there, we can look at hormones, basic blood work, that kind of stuff, how your lipids look, comprehensive blood panels. Then from there, you can look at your gut. That's the big one that's coming around now. We're learning more and more about that. But then I think that goes into a cycle between the gut and the brain because you can't separate the two. So like if your thinking affects your gut and your gut affects your thinking. So I've gone down the rabbit hole there. And then the most recent one that I've kind of dived headfirst into is heavy metal toxicity.
Hmm.
And that one to me is like, holy shit, this might be the next level of like, all right, when I peel back
Hmm.
this onion, it's really giving me some benefit. So that's the other one. And again, like anybody who's looking into biohacking, the biggest thing is like, don't get into it if you're not willing to go down the rabbit hole, because once you can't unknow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and I think also you throw out the term functional medicine, and we're just hitting on all the fun terms today. Do you refer out for that? Is that something you're incorporating into your coaching? And as a quick aside and plug for recent episode, I actually had two functional medicines husband and wife team that work out of downtown Miami Miami Beach there, I think, that I've known for quite a long time. They were on a recent episode. I'd love to connect you guys if you don't already have I assume it sounds like you have a good network of folks you're working with, but would love to connect you with them. You, again, based on how things have been going, I wouldn't be surprised if you're like best friends with them.
Or at least maybe I've come across them. So
Yeah.
for me, my first level of hormone stuff is R3 Health. Joe Radich, he's a PA who has some background in functional medicine, and age restoration is where you're making most of your money because that's what gets people in the door. But then again, just like us, it's like, okay, cool, that's what you want, but maybe you need some of this, proper supplementation, some lifestyle and dietary adjustments based upon the person's, buy-in. The other big resource that I have for gut health and all things, functional medicine wise is Dr. Peter Koslowski. He's out of, I want to say Chicago, and then also out of Montana, Bozeman. So he does telehealth, and he's phenomenal. Unfunk Your Gut is his kind of his thing. But he's actually, I think, writing right now a book on heavy metal toxicity and detoxing from that. So, I definitely outsource once I can do dietary and some lifestyle stuff, and I get into things like meditation and mindfulness and peeling back layers and coaching in that sense. But once a person maxes out their ability, or we find that there's some underlying funky shit going on, at the very least, go see your healthcare practitioner to get some baseline blood work and that kind of stuff. But then from there, if they don't have the capacity to get the testing and put together the pieces, then I outsource from there.
Yeah, and unfortunately, most conventional docs do not. And I'm happy to throw that statement out there and deal with the consequences to some extent.
Yeah, for sure. And that's actually something, because obviously I listen to your podcast, and I know that there's some some stuff grinds your gears in terms of conventional medicine and the approaches for physical therapy and that kind of thing. And you know what, I have much more of a neutral approach to a lot of these things now, because at the end of the day, if those didn't exist, we wouldn't have a job. Right? Because if they were doing it the right way, then they would never see us. Right. So I just take it as an opportunity. Now, that being said, could everything be better? But I think there's a reason why things end up being the way they are. And then there are those like us who, quote unquote, are fighting the fight to change things. But I don't see it that way anymore. I see it as like, I get to work with people who want to work with me.
Right.
I'm not going to be changing minds, or I don't need to, you know what I mean? So I'm much more accepting now. That being said, there was times where I was like, the system sucks. Everyone sucks. Why does this, person who shows off their abs or their butt gets millions of followers and this and that? But I'm like, even if I had all that, then what? Then I'm going to ascend and I get to the bottom of your tattoo. Like that doesn't happen. And that's, right. And then that's also another pursuit that egoically and personally I had to deal with, because that then prevents me from helping people, because I think I need to be somewhere else.
For sure. No, it's again, we're getting into the Buddhist almost mindset of everything is exactly where it should be. And, and that's the battle too. And that's something within physical therapy. And I just recorded another podcast for Jason Leonards of Revolutionary You, which is a 4-part series we recorded over 4 weeks. That took some commitment, but this morning we really he kind of let me rip on all the things I see wrong with the professions and possible things we could be changing. And again, it is that question that I continue to battle with. And again, maybe you are more evolved than me, and again, no judgments around that. That's okay. But again, that's the battle I have as a doctor of physical therapy, and having been involved in the American Physical Therapy Association and seeing what we do as a profession. Is there the avenue to improve and challenge? Because I do see little bits, like we talk about this 1% of folks pushing the thing in what seems to be the right direction. And is it a matter of, hey, like calling people to arms? And again, this is a smaller revolution of things, and there's bigger fish to fry, whether it's racial equality or trans rights or things like that. But it's really an interesting avenue that I've been battling with of do I have a role, like you're saying? Should I just and that's literally the conversations I've had within those who are trying to get me to be more involved in the physical therapy advocacy, of me saying like, I'm just going to do what I do and I'm going to help the person in front of me. And that's how I'm going to change, again, be the change you want to see in the world kind of thing, versus like you're saying, you know, I don't care if I don't reach 10 million people. And you know, knees over toes guy who's you know, super popular now, or if you've seen Move You, and they're putting, like you said, you know, they're literally putting vaginas in your face now. If you've seen some of their recent posts, and not to call them out, but yeah, they grab a lot of attention. And again, is it moving things in a slightly better direction? I don't know. But yeah, you've opened up quite a can of interesting introspection for me as well there, that I definitely will acknowledge I'm still battling with. And again, I want to be as zen as you one day.
You know, I'm not, I'm a regular person. You know what I mean? Like we only see what you see, you know, you don't see what's going on in my mind, because those things don't go through my head, man. This sucks. And that's the thing that I was always very challenged with as a coach was, man, I think this way and I shouldn't think this way.
Mm,
And that's such a denial of being a human being.
right.
Right? Like, give me some defining characteristics of a human being. We're greedy, we're selfish, we're angry, we have rage, we're sad. And then I go, okay, cool. I want to not have all of those things, and I want to only be happy or, like, you know, in flow. That's not how it works. You know what I mean? Like, everything in nature works as it should. And it's a pretty much a slap in the face to nature to be like, oh, no, I got this better than you. Right? Like, you don't have to think about your heart beating. You don't have to think about the molecular processes of your brain. You don't have to think about digestion. But all of a sudden we step in when we don't want this emotion or we don't want this thought, and we go, I got it from here. And that's kind of where the shift is for me, because as I start to kind of like really allow that stuff to be there, it gets me more present. And then as I'm more present, I can show up for my clients, my family, in ways that I never would be able to, because I'm always looking at the world through the lens of all that shit that's going on, instead of for what it is, which is infinite possibility. Right? There's nothing that stops you personally right now from being the world's greatest physical therapist, other than you're addicted to the story that you've been telling yourself, that you need to fight against the system, yada, yada, yada. There's so many people that we constantly see on an everyday basis that live their absolute highest, like, calling and truth, and people just flock to them. You know what I mean? Like, there's just like people. Here's a perfect example. If you go to YouTube right now and you Google, or excuse me, if you search for, there's a guy who goes to the woods and builds huts and brick stuff, and like, literally, he's an ancestral guy. He's been doing this for a decade. There's no dialogue to it. It's him just building
Hmm.
shit in the woods. 10.5 million
Yeah.
subscribers.
Yeah.
10.5 million subscribers. Just to give you an idea for reference, some of the biggest YouTubers, you know, who have channels,
Mhm.
have like maybe 5 to 6. So you're
Right.
talking about a guy who is like, you know what I like to do? I like to build shit in the woods, and I'm going to film it and put it on YouTube, and let's see what happens. And 10.5 million people decided to subscribe to this channel
Hmm.
because it's a guy who's just loving what he does. So my goal is no longer to necessarily like convince people of X, Y, and Z. I'm the lighthouse.
Hmm.
I'm not getting into the lifeboats anymore and trying to convince people to come to shore. If
Ooh.
I'm the lighthouse and I'm just like that beacon, people who are going to show up, and I'm going to continue to evolve, and I'm going to continue to try and change the people that are nearest to me, and, you know, see everybody where they're at. And, you know, that's kind of where I'm at now. That being said, in a week, I might go burn it all down.
No, I love that analogy. Be the lighthouse, not the.
Primitive technology, I believe what he's called. So
Hmm.
I got to give him a shout out, and I never miss a video. This guy's amazing. I've
And he
never heard
doesn't
what his
even.
voice sounds like, but
Right. He doesn't even talk. That's funny. I mean, I have again, another one of my recent podcast guests that I connected with. He's doing something similar. He decided to do a 2-year experiment to go live in a tent yurt up in
oh, I
Maine.
didn't know they had those.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he built it himself, but it's just, you know, so he had a little bit of survival mechanisms and a little more safety and a little bit more comfort between the, you know, complete bare bones of a yurt, and maybe making it a little bit more functional, I guess. So, but anyway, he's, I think, done something similar. So I wonder, either he's probably heard of him, this primitive technology guy, or but yeah, it sounds like there might be some interesting overlap. So I'm definitely excited to connect those guys.
For sure. And the other thing is that like that's that guy's highest calling. If
Mm.
showing your butthole on Instagram brings you like closer to your higher self, or like you really have fun doing that, like great. But like if you're doing it because you want to get people like you, then maybe that's not the best thing for you. Like it's
Right.
just going to kind of instigate the things that are perpetuating through your mind, which is I'm identified by the idea that people like me or think of me in a certain way. And I know I look at like social media in this sense, but it's we do it in an everyday basis with people around
Hmm.
us, even our closest people who love us. Eventually they're going to leave us, whether we leave them or they leave us. And at the end of the day, or at the end of our lives, we are who we are and we're alone. And if you're not okay with the person that you look at in the mirror, and you're not working on that person on a regular basis, and getting really in touch with who that person is, then you're constantly fighting against these phantoms that your mind creates, and you're getting further and further away from kind of like coming home, as I say.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of powerful stuff there. And again, it sounds like a lot of parallels of the kind of Buddhist principle that I think I understood a long time ago of desire leads to suffering. And so the goal is to minimize desire. And that desire might be like, it doesn't matter if I post this thing and I don't get a million views, like you're saying. So,
It's funny because that resonates with me, because then my goal was, or then my suffering was, oh, I have to not desire.
yeah, right,
So it's
right.
like, okay, now I'm desiring not to desire. And then again, you get caught in the that endless loop. But like the thing that I have found for me personally, because I know I have very close friends who've done plant medicines and done retreats and all that kind of stuff. For me personally, meditation is my go-to.
Hmm.
When I get to a flow of like a good hour to 2 hours of meditation and things just dissolve around me, there are times where like your breath feels like heaven. Like
Yeah.
every breath in and out is amazing. And then all of a sudden the mind comes in and goes, "Ooh, this feels good. How do we do this forever?" And then you go,
Mm.
"That's it. It's gone." Like once
Yep.
you
Yep.
realize that it's not enough for our mind to realize to just be happy. We have to know that we're happy. But
Yeah.
once you know that you're happy, your mind is now in it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
you
Right.
have you ever done like a really challenging workout and you're done with it and you're like, "I don't even know what just happened." You kinda
Yep.
have that like old school moment with like, Will Ferrell, is it Will Ferrell? Where he's
Yeah.
like, "I don't know what happened. I blacked out." Like
I blacked out. Yeah. Yeah.
that is actually more close to living than you analyzing your first kiss. You know
Right.
what I mean? People always ask like, "Man, I wonder what kids are thinking of when they're like 2 or 3 years old." The thing is they're not. They're
Hmm.
literally in the moment
Yeah.
right there. They're looking at that block and they're there,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, obviously they grow this ability to be that like they can look at themselves as they do things. And that's kind of like the separation of the witness versus the person who's doing it. And then I think the entire time after that, once we created this ego, is to kind of dissolve that again and be able to kind of come home and be whole once again.
Yeah, I didn't expect all these tangents we're going on, but I love it. I was like, we're just going to talk about exercise and intensity and LMNT and salt and low
You know
carb
what?
diet.
And this is how I pull everything back though, Bo, is all of those things, fitness, wellness, longevity. If your body is working optimally, it works a lot easier. If you're underslept, if you're stressed out, if you're eating like dog shit, if your electrolytes are constantly imbalanced, if you're hormonally damaged, all of this mindfulness stuff, you're going against like an absolute dragon, a dinosaur, because your body's not working the way it should.
Mm.
You could have all the mindfulness in the world, but if your temple isn't working as it should, it's really, really challenging. And I know from personal experience, once I had my son, my complete hormones were crashed. Everything was destroyed from stress and that lack of sleep. Once I got on TRT, I felt like a new person. And I'm not talking about like super physiological levels. We're talking
Mm.
about very therapeutic doses. It just made everything easier.
Yeah.
Now, how long am I going to leverage this for? I'm not sure. Maybe forever, maybe temporarily, but like right now, I'm liking where I'm at, and it's giving me exactly what I need in order for
Mm.
me to, like we said in the beginning, it addresses my fitness.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. That's great. Yeah, and we talked about mindfulness and self-improvement as one of the kind of three things you wanted to talk about and you're excited about. So we kind of touched on that, but outside of the heavenly breaths that you mentioned, again, would love to hear what again, I think for a lot of folks, there's like the Calm app. I know my wife does a 10-minute meditation every morning, that kind of thing. I find that my own practice of that has been within fitness, and I try to have that intentionality with doing a kettlebell swing or something like that, where if you can tap that in, like that to me becomes the cheating mechanism, the biohack, if you will, to getting better mental clarity, physiologically as well. Of I don't have the patience right now because I'm still trying to grow my business and provide for my family and all the stress that comes around that. And I have a very I don't want to call it ADD or ADHD type mind, but it helps me to distract myself in that regard. So for me, just doing some crocodile breathing or really deep belly breathing and counting those breaths and just focusing on that task, like you're saying, that's being in the moment. So, and to me, that's what mindfulness or meditation is trying to get you to do. And that seems like maybe the more advanced level for what I'm talking about. And for most people, again, I'd love to understand how maybe you introduce this to clients, or all these higher level kind of concepts that we're talking about here. Is it something that you're trying to get every single person you work with to understand and get to? Is there like a progressive overload of mindfulness, if you will?
It's a great question. And no, realistically, as soon as mindfulness or self-improvement becomes a goal,
Mm,
it's gone. It's
mm,
lost, because now you've created someone who's okay. It's the ego showing up and trying to fix the ego. You know
right.
what I mean? It's like the guy who comes up on stage and is like, "Listen, listen to me. I'll fix everything." And then someone comes along, pushes him out of the way, like, "Oh, that guy's crazy. I can't believe it. I've got the answer, guys. You got to listen to me." And
Hmm.
then another guy comes along. That's what we try to do to like improve ourselves.
Right.
And like you said, there's so many different ways to become present and just be in the moment, and then just listen to what nature and our body actually want us to do. And usually it's not like, "Oh man, I've got to write 16 blog posts by the end of the day." It might be like, "You know what? I want to call one of my friends. Or maybe I just want to write about this topic and I just want to have fun." And usually those things that you're passionate about, those are the things that end up being like the most like resonating things that you do. Like that sparked like, for me, and I know probably for you, the reason why you got into helping people is because you had some intrinsic feel of like, man, like this feels good to do this. It's fun. And then we go, "Oh, let's like a look around at what everybody else is doing." And
Yeah.
then we'll try to mimic that because they're successful. And then that's how like the ego takes over.
Hmm.
And, like crocodile breathing, long walks and unplugged are great because you're just there. For some people, high intensity workouts, they force them to just be present. You're not
Right.
thinking about the work that you have to do or that you just did. It's just being here. So it's like, find out what that thing is for you and do it on a regular basis, but treat it medicinally. And I
Mm,
think that's the thing that people OD with is like, "Man, if I don't exercise, I don't feel good." I'm like, well, maybe that's something to look at. Like maybe there
mm,
should be other things that you can look toward. Meaningful conversations, journaling, meditation, that give you some of that without having to beat your body down all the time. And that's
right.
something that I've had to do because I don't have the time to train like I used to. I have 2 hours total to train every week
Oh,
because I take care of my son and I have work and all that kind of
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So like that's a part of me that had to die. But, I've doubled and tripled down on all the areas around, my
Hmm.
exercise. But really what that's shown is like, dude, exercising intensely for massive amounts of volume is so overrated to
Yeah.
change your body composition or maintain your body composition. If you, address your diet, everybody says abs are made in the kitchen and then they go and work out for 2 hours.
Right.
Like, why don't you listen to what you were saying? Eat right. Or are you exercising so you can eat like dog shit? That's what most people do. "Oh, I do that. That's me." I'm like, "Okay." So at
Right.
least you're aware of that. So, I
Yeah.
know that's a couple tangents there, but that's just kind of my perspective on it.
Totally all right. Yeah, and you also said a keyword that triggered me: awareness, and the awareness around that. I don't know if you've read this book. I just posted a book review of the book. It's called Awareness. and it's by Anthony DeMello, who was a Jesuit priest that dove into, again, a lot of these other religions, including Buddhism and things like that. It was actually recommended by Tim Ferriss, and I think for anyone who's a fan of the 4 Hours stuff that he's done, he said, one of the questions he asks a lot of his guests is, what's the number one book you've gifted the most? And I think based on a lot of that, and he's interviewed some of the top performers in the world, and that's his whole thing is, it led him to have a couple hundred copies of this book, Awareness, in his house. So anyone who comes by, he's like, hey, here's this, free book. And again, you guys can go get it for like $10 on Amazon, I think right now. Or go to your local bookstore, support those guys.
I love that. That's really cool. Yeah. Yeah.
But
speaking of which, I think the book that really started me on the path of where I am now, I had a really bad back injury in 2015, 16. Like I was deadlifting and felt a pop and had to be carried out of the gym. And I've been in all types of pain in my life and worked through it, had my leg broken, feet broken, shoulders, whatever. I wrestled, I played lacrosse, I did football, the whole thing. I had to be carried out. And the first thing that happened once I hurt my back, I started crying. And it wasn't because I was in pain. It was a thought came through my mind. Oh no, I'm not going to be able to train, or how am I going to be able to work when I need surgery? All that was like in a split second. That was just overwhelming sensation of, oh no. And that's kind of where that pain came from. And one of my good friends, Max Elhaj at the time, directed me to a book, The Divided Mind by Dr. John E. Sarno. You probably have come across it. He was a surgeon in New York, orthopedic spine surgeon in New York. He was in practice until his 90s. And basically he told people, your mind is making this up. It's psychosomatic. Listen to this course and see how your pain is afterward. And for me personally, my road led me to therapy and releasing a lot of that pain and that kind of path as well, because I had a lot of trauma that had built up over time, and I kind of created this identity to prevent me from feeling that pain. But that was also preventing me from having relationships. It was preventing me from expanding career-wise. I had rage. Just have bouts of rage because it finally would boil over. And I got to a point where I was like, man, like, this is it. This is the crossroads for me. And it came from a back injury. So it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I wouldn't be who I am right now had I not had that happen. So, I think that's something that is always a silver lining to people. I never say things are good or bad. It's kind of what you make of it. And I think that's our control in life, is like, oh, you missed the red light or you hit a red light. Yeah, it's supposed to happen that way. Let's see the opportunity in this quote unquote hardship.
Yeah, his more famous book is The Mind Body Prescription, but obviously he's got a few books that are pretty powerful. Definitely familiar with his work, and that's another thing too. Now, you again, about my own ego, I guess, to make it all selfishly about me. This is my podcast, God damn it. But the thing that comes up for me real quick, and I appreciate you sharing that personal anecdote, but is again back to the physical therapy thing, and this is where it comes back to, like, this is why I have run away from the insurance model. This is why I try to practice the way I do, because there is much more that we can talk about here. When somebody presents with low back pain, as much as I want to give them a crack and a little, chiropractic adjustment, whatever we call it, there's so much more. And again, there's these layers of, again, cool. Are you sleeping enough? Are you eating enough? All this low hanging fruit, but then this much deeper mindset, again, connection to other humans, and this, again, they call it the biopsychosocial model. So there is something biologically going on, but again, the psychology and the pain mechanisms. And if you go on physical therapy Twitter, you can see, a couple hundred folks arguing about, oh yeah, no, pain should be talked about this way. And if we snap our finger over here and distract the person, they don't have back pain right now. Look, focus on the finger, focus on, and oh, you don't have any back pain. And then as soon as you stop, oh, the back pain's back. And this is something that's going to be debated for a long time. But again, to me, this is where we need to have these conversations and share these anecdotes of going through these experiences. And like you said, another book that reminded me of is The Gift of Injury.
Oh, wow.
And that was by Stuart Mcgill, Dr. Stuart Mcgill, who's one of the most renowned spine biomechanists in the world. And again, you can argue about, I've heard, again, all sorts of people argue about, is he right? Is he wrong? And he's one of the most studied folks in the world. And again, it's at the end of the day, it's what can we, like you're saying, changing the mindset to more of what can we take away from this? Is there somewhere to apply this to my own thing? Not just, hey, you're wrong, I'm right. And like you were saying, the guy in the square who's like, this guy's over there talking. Go ahead.
I want to do that always. I want to be right so that
Mhm.
you're wrong, so that I can
Yeah.
create this pedestal that I'm on that everybody else is not on. I realize that in myself.
Right.
Where I'm practicing, and this is I go back to Jules in Pulp Fiction, where he's got the gun on Tim Roth.
Yes.
After he he fast, he was getting his wallet and he puts the gun on him, and he gives him the little diatribe. I've said that to like 100 and whatever guys before I killed them. He goes, and you are the whatever, and I'm trying, man. I'm really trying to be the shepherd.
Right.
And that's what I see, is that I want to be collaborative now. I want to hear you before I tell you what I have to say. Because at the very least, I've learned something by shutting my mouth. I can't learn anything, even if it's the wrong thing. Oh, I know that I've affirmed what my belief is because your argument is nonsense.
Right.
I can't learn if I open my mouth. And I think I want to so badly. My ego wants to be right and it wants to tell you how wrong you are. But like, we have to, it happens in every interaction. It's an opportunity, every interaction that we have, to do that. And if we're wondering like, hey man, how are we going to change the world? It's just literally one interaction at a time. You don't have to change the world. It's just this interaction, and then the next interaction, and the next interaction, and then that's it. And then it just feeds into the next one, because now you're being successful. People are much nicer to you because you're being nicer to them. It's a reflection of who you are on the inside. And as you grow in that way, you have more capacity to enjoy all the things of life. You can start laughing at the people on Move You and these guys because like, hey man, this is all fun. This is all a game. We have a front row seat. And if I'm spending my entire life being resentful and salty of people because they don't see it the same way as I do, I'm like, damn, that's such a waste. And I understand it. It's part of me, but at least I'm realizing it now. And I'm just trying to be I'm probably trying to be 1% better each day.
My favorite saying ever. Two things that I wanted to dive into off of that is, one, I'll share my own personal anecdote, is that what you just described has been one of the biggest game changers in my marriage.
Wow.
And dealing with any kind of conflict. But it took a friend of mine who's been through 2 marriages, twice divorced, and him going through a lot of learning and things like that. And again, having the openness and awareness to say, hey, this is what I'm going through. I want to receive what you're saying. Like, and so his advice to me was something I've heard probably hundreds of times before. And like a lot of coaching cues as well, back on your heels, or whatever the physical cue is, it might not click until it does. And so this was a very powerful timing thing too, where again, hopefully this reaches somebody who's at a point in their life where maybe this some of the things we're talking about here helps click or move you in the right direction, that maybe whether there is a right direction or not. But
yeah.
that
or it's all the right direction.
Or it's all the right direction. There you go. But that's where, and then it's funny too, because now you got me reflecting as my brain's jumping around to, before I finish that other thought I'll come back to as I tell stories this very centripetous way, is the other podcast I started with my buddy in New York, who's a personal trainer, is the Demand Better podcast. And so that's the question, is should we demand better from other people? Should we demand better from ourselves? Or should we just, like you're saying, leave it alone and just bring attention to the fact that, this is what happens. This is what exists. And I call this podcast Bono Stuff because I want to know more stuff. And I know enough that I don't know very much. And the things I do know, I have to keep questioning. And so to finish that, what's helped my marriage, to finish that thought as we jump around, is, again, the fact that it's not about you. And again, it's, no matter if I make it about myself, and this is, it's another question. And that's the ego that you're talking about. And it's like, hey, I didn't, again, this is not necessarily an example that happened. I always put the toilet seat down, God damn it. But, if the argument is like, why didn't you put the toilet seat down? And you say, well, I was distracted, and it's your fault that I didn't put and you get into this back and forth versus like, oh, like, let me hear you, like you're saying, and let me understand why this is upsetting you. And like, all I can do is be here and listen. And like, you tell me what you need from me, not I'm going to defend. And like, why is this upsetting you? You know, because we want to solve problems. And this is also a very masculine, feminine as we go down some of these rabbit holes. But I just have to say again, that just whatever click for me was one of the biggest game changers in not just my marriage, but in general, in my ego, my relationships. And I'm trying to figure out how to apply it better to business and Move You and these podcasts and things like that.
Yeah. But you know what, that being said, there's reason for it, man. There's reason for it. And again, there's a part of all of us that go, man, I shouldn't be this way, because this way would make me much more but this is the way it is, man. And the more we fight against that, the more the ego has something to fight against. Like, imagine we just let things be for a little while, and then there's a voice that comes up that goes, man, there's no way that this will work. This is terrible. This is never going to work out. Remember that time we did this and the blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And if you realize that if you're just present, there is no reference of the past. There is no future. There's just now. And if you're saying, well, this isn't working, you're still not there. You will know when you are there, because there will be no words to describe where you're at. And that is, I think, where a lot of the self-help, self-improvement, mindfulness world comes to a block, because you're describing something that once you describe it is no longer the thing. I know that sounds really, really weird.
It's a moving target.
Exactly.
Sort of.
So the best way to describe it is, I think, quantum mechanics. It's like it's so there's an electron, and you go, okay, this is where the electron is. Okay, so it's there. It's like, no, it can't be there because you're there. So wait a second. No.
It's the Spaceballs. You remember the Spaceballs scene?
Oh yeah. But when will then be here? Or when will then be now?
they're watching for anyone who hasn't seen it, they're watching the live video. He's like, is this happening now? And they're looking back in the camera as it's happening, and then nope, you just missed it. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, exactly. So, and that's the thing that we kind of addressed earlier, is that if you think you're there, you can't be, because you're aware that you're there. So this is basically the way I see it, is you can tell what it's not, you can't tell what it is. So like, you can peel back all these things that are the false you and away from where you want to be. And what eventually it strips down to being is it. And that's now, and that's being present. And you'll know, because you'll talk to people and you'll hear them, and there'll be no need to think. It's just a quick reaction, not in the sense of like, oh, I have to say something. It's, oh, this is flowing through me. And we all touch on this in different areas of our lives, and some are more successful than others, but it is there. It's open to us. And you know, if I can touch that, then anybody can.
Yeah. A lot to unpack. I mean, that's a great place to, I think, leave it off. I want to be respectful of your time and all that. And actually, yeah, again, that book Awareness is something that it sounds like you either, somehow read in another part of your existence or parallel, universe or whatever, because there's a lot there that I think it's trying to send that same kind of message. So it's a quick, easy read for anyone interested. I might have to send you a copy or something.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah. Or I can go to my local bookstore and
go to your local bookstore. Yeah. Let's wrap it up there. Let's put on the audio slave to,
awesome, man.
Finish telling people where they can find you.
So if you're in South Florida or in the Palm Beach County, I do at-home personal training. flochfitness.com. Just fill out a form. We can get you set up there. Floch Fitness on all of the socials. So YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. And I appreciate Bo for having me on this podcast. It's fun, and I had a great time, man.
Thank you again for being on here. Again, I'll definitely have the open invite anytime you want to come back on. And I hope we can do 7 more episodes in the next few weeks, but I don't want to take up all your time. But yes, so we'll sign off, guys. Go listen to Audio Slave. You won't regret it. Again, I think I said it before we went live. It's one of my go-to workout soundtracks, so I definitely recommend that. And
it's Soundgarden meets Rage Against the Machine. How could you go
literally wrong? That's not a description, it's actually the people who came together. But yeah, if you like any of that stuff, if you're not familiar with Audio Slave by now, definitely go go check that out. But yeah, guys, get 1% better. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And yeah, we hope this was a fun one for sure. And I'm looking forward to going back and listening to this. And we'll talk to you guys next time.